Hi, this is Abby, and this is my 20 months on HRT video. And if you hear kitty noises in the background, that's because I have a kitty visiting, as well as my lovely lavender husband Michael is staying with me. So my apologies for being late on getting these out. It's been a very busy 2 months. I know that you've heard that from me before, but it really has been. And the thing that I want to speak to here is very, very specifically to work that I'm doing on being a transgender woman and healing from that history. I think that a lot of us, there's a lot of societal stigma toward transgender women and men. And I think that it's getting easier for the younger generations. I think that it was harder for mine, and it was certainly a lot harder for the generations that came before us. But I know that for me, and this is about my story, and that's all that I can really speak to, I had internalized a lot of transphobia because of where I grew up. It was a very heteronormative culture, and it simply was not okay for a little boy to want to be a little girl. And so from a very early age, I had a perception that I was other, that I was inferior, that I was defective, that I was simply wrong in some way, and that who I was, honestly, who is this person that's sitting before you, was something that I could not express with any degree of physical safety. And that is very, very, very real. And that is one of the reasons that I was diagnosed with PTSD, is because I lived in a state of perpetual fear, and later with puberty of hopelessness, because when I was a little kid, and I mentioned this before, I had breast tissue. I now know that I have birthing hips, small waist. You can see from my features, fairly feminine. And I was picked out, and I was picked on, and all of that. And that happens to a lot of kids. The difference is that for me, I knew that I wanted to be a little girl, and that's what I perceived to be the fundamental thing that I had to hide from everyone. Because it was like, okay, I can get beat up, or I can get made fun of, or what have you. But if they find out that, then I'm dead. There's a great quote from a story that really resonates with me in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, from a woman, a young woman who came into the program. And she says, when she got sober, she believed, her view of the world around her was that if you saw who I really was, you would either turn away in disgust or use one of my many weaknesses to destroy me. And that was really the way that I viewed the world. And with puberty, I just didn't believe that there was any hope of ever being able to live as a woman. My own body had betrayed me. The hair, the voice, the growth, all of that was just so atrocious to me. I had put a gun to my head at 14 for the first time. The first. And this is not a woe is me, but I'm qualifying a little bit. I'm telling you what it was like, and then I'm going to tell you what happened and what it's been like since, and the work that I'm doing now. So that's just a preface to understand a bit of how I was shaped. The other core piece is that, and this goes to the reparenting that I had to do, was the only source of information that I had about who I was in pornography. Pretty sad. So by age 10, 11, I would look in the back of these magazines, and I would see, quote, she-males. And it was like, well, that seems like what I am somehow. And what I saw was degradation, masochism, and I internalized that I was this thing that was not deserving of love, that was defective, that deserved to be degraded, and that deserved to be hurt. And that belief set propagated itself throughout my intimacy, and it also propagated in myself. It propagated in the sense of otherness from others, and my ability to be honest with other people. And so I had sexualized my identity, and it was really pretty gross, really, really was. And so what happened in the last 2 months was I just got to this place, despite all the work that I was doing, where I was still experiencing these periods of feeling this intense self-hate toward myself, of seeing the masculine heritage, that being testosterone affected, and being disgusted with myself and feeling like, though I was happy to finally be living as a woman, I was still this other, and that and how was I ever going to overcome these huge walls that I perceived between me and other women and me in terms of my relationships with the world in general and with other individuals. I just got to a place where I was sick and tired of hating me. And so at the behest of my therapist, I went back through and I wrote an inventory, 28 handwritten pages, of all the experiences that I had that to me were still traumatizing when I looked at them. And it was the first time that I really had the courage to look at all of those things and to share them with a sponsor who was a woman, to share them with my therapist who was a woman, to discuss them with men and women who are close to me in my life, who I felt that I could be vulnerable and to trust. And what came up through that, in part, especially before the puberty piece, was I always had a girl brain. Big surprise. So I began to see that it was messed up, but that there was always continuity. And it took the other women in my life, especially, to look at those experiences and to say, you know what, I did that too. That's the way that I thought. And so what I perceived between this huge wall between me, say, and other women and feeling like a normal woman, it was like as I shared that with other cissexual women, they were like in their breaths of acceptance. It was like this huge wall, they just went, and it was gone. Because then I could see the continuity of my history. In terms of dealing with the child, the 12-year-old in puberty, thank God for Michael, who took me through a really intense reparenting. And I went back and I talked to that 11, 12-year-old transgender girl. And I explained to her that what she was seeing was not what it meant to be a woman, that we were not this defect, that we were not subhuman, that we were not freaks, that we are people with what I believe to be a birth defect, that we are women, and that we have struggles to overcome, as many do, transgender or not. And so we burned all of that. And when I left her in a jersey skirt, a t-shirt, a pair of chucks, pierced ears, and a soccer ball, in a place where she felt safe to go forward and to deal with what it means to be a transgender woman in a healthy way. And that was extremely healing for me. It was certainly not something that would have been possible for me growing up. But it allows me to reclaim my memories, reclaim my history, and to see myself in entirety. And with that, to let go of those fears and that toxicity that had propagated itself, really from my earliest memories of being other and feeling like I needed to hide who I was, to now being able to embrace myself as a woman, albeit with a birth defect. You know what? So what? There are lots of women born with birth defects, and they deal with it, many of them with courage and with dignity, and I'm going to be one of them. And so, what I'm doing from this point forward is I'm healing those wounds, I'm looking to forgiveness, and I'm recreating myself and experiencing myself as the woman that I want to be, which is a woman of empathy and of wisdom and of strength and of courage and of emotional availability and of vulnerability and of friendship and all those characteristics that to me are things that give me goosebumps, the women that inspire me, women like Audrey Hepburn, Katharine Hepburn, Garbo, Dietrich, women of character, women of style, women who knew themselves and women who had courage. And that is the woman that I am going to create going forward. And I am going to heal this toxicity in me, and I'm not going to allow it to ruin the rest of my life. No, I am going to live this life fully and powerfully as a woman, and I'm going to fix what needs fixed. So thank you and I hope that some of this was of value.